Hey, friends, welcome to The Motive, where we go and discuss a reason for doing something, especially one that is not obvious, or hopefully might not be obvious to everybody, or should be obvious for everybody.
Or should be.
Should be. Today, we're going to talk basically about a big topic that's come up recently, which is it better to rent or is it better to buy?
Right.
And maybe we'll surprise some of you with what our thoughts are on it. But let's dig into it, not waste any time, and get to it. Will, what is happening?
A tale as old as time. Rent versus buy, huh?
Yeah, baby. I mean,
I know you're all thinking that, we're mortgage guys. We think buy, sell, whatever you're saying, right? But, let's look at the details of rent versus buy and see where it's really at. You know, based off of what I know is like renting. What's that old adage? Renting's, you're wasting money. You're paying 100% interest at that point. You're not gaining equity. You're, all those things that you can think of, right? That you've been
somebody
told.
else's mortgage. You're
You're
not
paying
getting
someone else's
ahead.
mortgage, right? You're not building
Right.
equity. You're not going to have, all those things you hear about, those negatives. But we all know that interest rates have gone up, prices of homes have gone up, mortgage payments have gone up. How are you going to afford this? So I mean, what's our why for why would we rent over buy? What's the reason?
Really quick, just before we go into that, because I want to go over the why, when, where, what, how, and all that jazz that we talked about too. But I'm going to say that buying is always better. So you are going to hear something you probably thought you'd hear from me, but it's not always better for you depending on what the season is or where you're at in your life right now, right? That's the biggest thing. But so my view is going to stay the same on that part, but I don't think it's for everybody too, right? So I think it's, like a business owner might be good to go lease a nice big SUV, but a wage earner out of college is not, right? It's not ready. They're at that point, that time in their life. So let's go over the why. What is the why? Why would renting be better for you? Well, first off, in today's market, on the first layer, it's cheaper, probably, right? It is actually cheaper nowadays, right, versus in most parts of the country. It is cheaper to rent a house or a decent house than it is going to be to buy a house.
Unless you've come into a huge amount of money to put as a down payment, which nobody does, you're going to pay a ton. You're going to have a huge mortgage payment compared to what you'll rent, right?
Right.
As far as payment alone.
Payment wise, if you're just looking at, when you buy a house, there's 3, 4, 5 different ROIs that you typically kind of take into consideration when you're trying to figure out, is it worth it and stuff like that. But we're talking about the first one, which is what is more cost effective on a month-to-month basis. And like I said, I can't argue. I think renting is usually cheaper right now in most places, even though rents have gone crazy up as well, but so have home values and rates and everything else, right? When you buy a house. So the other big part of why you might want to rent is that you don't have to come up with a down payment. And, even though you can get away with a low down payment, which means a really high monthly payment,
mortgage payment, yeah,
right? You might not have that money. I mean, you're buying a $500,000 house, which the average median home across the country is like 400,000 now, and that's all the way from the Baton Rouge to San Francisco, right? So different markets stuff. That average is there. You're buying a $500,000 house, even at 5%, you're talking $12,500 down plus closing costs. You're talking about $25,000 minimum. So you don't have to do that when you rent. You pay your first month and your deposit, right? Another big thing is that there's no commitment. I can rent and maybe I want to buy a year, and that's probably the biggest one that we'll probably emphasize, because it might not be the time to buy for you right now, and you don't have to worry about committing to something that you are not ready for, and you can prepare and plan for something different. And then, of course, along with that is you're not ready. Your finances aren't in check. You haven't paid out. You got too much other debts. You're not making more than you spend. That kind of stuff. I think
we've covered that. We see that a lot, though. But I mean, they're all connected in some way, right? Obviously, it's cheaper. You can't afford it. It's going to have a high mortgage payment. But that's because you didn't have a down payment. You haven't saved. You haven't got your finances in check. You haven't paid off your credit cards. You're not saving monthly. You're actually spending more than you're making. So all those things play into that. So
I think to me, those are the big reasons why renting might be better, right? Cheaper, no commitment, no money or not as much money down to get into it, and you're just not ready. But if you're thinking about that, then when when do you buy versus rent?
When do you make that switch? Like, when does that go? When does that switch over?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead, Will. Yeah. What are your
yeah,
thoughts on when
when
you
can
should
you
do it?
afford it? But we just talked about it. Like, okay, when you buy, house prices are up. I'm going to have a down payment, like you said, $25,000-$30,000 minimum with closing costs. How am I going to save this? You do have to get your finances in check. You have to pay off your credit cards. You have to maintain a healthy credit score, get it up, whatever it is. Those are the things that you have to do way ahead of trying to think about buying while you're renting. I know it's hard. Rents are high, rents are up to even do those things, but you have to figure out a way. And that's kind of our goal in some of our videos and some of our content, that we try and help you manage that and mitigate some of these things to help you get to that goal of buying. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. When you can afford it, right? That's like, you might not be able to afford it. You might not be on the right financial plan, the right budget, the right age bracket, the right maturity, whatever it is, you might not be ready for it. So when do you want to buy? When you can think differently. Part of thinking differently is knowing how money works. And most Americans don't know how money works, right? Like we talked about, there's lots of different ROIs. When you understand what that means, then you might be ready to buy. But if you're just living check to check, like a lot of us are right now, right? A lot of people are doing that right now. You can't jump into something like that and take on the responsibility
it's
like
a
that.
bigger. Let me give you a personal example. I could go rent a place right now, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, probably for $2,500 somewhere. Easy peasy, right? Nothing to it. There's still a lot of money to rent, but my mortgage payment's around $4,500 right now. So let me give, yeah. So are you ready to take that on? Can you take that on? Have you budgeted? Have you had the down payment to do that? All those things came into play to make this change and switch over. So, yeah, as a personal example, can you do it? Or can you pull it off? Are you ready? Can you maintain that? So
We'll have to make a video on the breakdowns of all the different ROIs, from the payment to the pay down to the appreciation to the tax benefits to the everything else in between, and kind of lay that out for somebody who is leaning more towards buying but maybe doesn't understand all of it too, right? Because that's stuff you look at. Like, you walked into a ton of equity, like you're paying $2,000 or more, $24,000 or more, or $24,000 more a year, but what are you getting in return for that? And doesn't make sense.
right. Well, this is where a big one, and just a big note on this is where we see most of the clients that want to buy and aren't ready. They have this disconnect. They think they're paying that $2,500 rent that I just talked about, and they're going to go buy a house, and their payment's going to go to $3,000 with no money down. That's just not the case. That might have been something closer to that 5 years ago, 7 years ago, whatever it may be. But with house prices and interest rates, it's not going to be that way right now. So that's where there's a big disconnect between renting and buying right now. So
Right. And if you're thinking, I love the phrase, if you are thinking about buying a house or still on the fence of it or not, but leaning towards it, remember, I like this phrase, so I'm going to throw it out there, but the buy a home, or marry a home, date a rate, right? Like, the
date the
rate's
rate.
not forever, it's short term, but if your house could be forever, it should be forever, whether it's your primary or it becomes an investment down the road. So
I was
I
trying to
always
think
like
of a third option. Could you like Tinder the timber or something?
yeah, tender the rate, yeah,
Tinder the timber. I don't know. Yeah, what
yeah,
you would do in between,
tender
but
the rental, date the rate.
there you
I
go.
don't know. But yeah, like I said, when? Well, guess what? The market right now is not forever. So maybe it doesn't fit you. Maybe it's later on. Maybe you don't know enough. Maybe it's not planned correctly. And again, ultimately, maybe it doesn't even fit into your budget right now. Just a quick example. Well, never mind. I'm not going to talk about that right now. We'll bring that up later. Denied on that example. So next big question is where, right? Where do I buy? Where would I buy? Or what is restricting me from buying? Is it because of the where?
Location, 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 right? Everybody wants to live in Beverly Hills, this and that, but can you afford it? A lot of people I know want to live in Orange County. It's by the beach. I'm only 5 minutes from the beach, bro. But the minimum house there is 7, 8, 9, $1 million. You have money for a $400,000 house. So know your budget, know what you can afford, and not try to extend that. And that's why you check out with the professionals, see what that payment's going to be, like I just said, and know where you're at. A lot of people want to move outside of their budget, which is human nature, but they see these videos of realtors showing these outstanding homes in the hills and this and that. I want that. it's just not in your budget. Like, just understand that. So it's hard to like, you have the champagne taste, but you got money for the Bud Light, pretty much, right? So,
I was going to throw it out there. Champagne taste on a beer budget.
right. So, yeah, it's always tough.
A lot of first-time home buyers, especially, right? A lot of first-time home buyers, like, hey guys, you're a first-time home buyer. If you're going to buy a house, change your life a little bit, sacrifice a little bit, and move to a place that actually you can afford. You might be comparing yourself with people that are on their second, third, or fourth home that have gained $500,000, $1 million of equity,
Right.
and you're trying to buy the same house they are. I personally have friends that are 40s and 50 years old that refuse to move out of an area and are wondering why they can't buy a $1.5 million area, and they're renting a little 1 or 2 bedroom apartment because they love that area, which is fine if that's the life they choose, but they can't sit there and question why they can't afford a $1.5 million, $12,000 a month mortgage payment or whatever on something like that.
Right.
Again, know your market, location. But sometimes you need to take a step back to take 2 steps forward.
Right. I compare it to a 16-year-old trying to go buy a Ferrari. Like, no, you're going to get the beater car to start.
Yeah, go crash into some poles and
Get
ding it up and learn your lessons and know what it really costs. Because guess what? If this is news to anybody, a house costs a lot more to maintain and operate than just the mortgage payment.
Right, and that's what we kind of want to next topic on this is what comes with the house purchase, right? I mean, this is another thing why you want to rent. Do you understand all the extras that come with buying a house? I mean, you've had multiple houses. What are some things you've run into when you bought? You're like, man, I didn't know this was going to happen, or I had to pay for this.
Well, say you buy a house, you got moving expenses. If you buy a new house, you got landscaping expenses to put in landscaping, right? Like a lot of people buy new construction because, like, oh, I want a new house. Well, guess what? You're probably going to look at 10 or 15% more that you're going to have to do into a yard, maybe grass or whatever else. Monthly maintenance and expenses. I can tell you right now, moving from our last house to this house, which is a lot bigger and a lot more maintenance, I have to spend probably close to $2,000 to $2,500 to $3,000 a month on top of the mortgage, with taxes, insurance, and everything included, on the maintenance. Landscaping, pool guy, stuff breaks down, handyman, electricity, water,
right,
plumbing. You want me to keep going? There's more
simple things that you would never think about.
Yeah, if you are buying, know all those are going to come with it, right? Now, why would renting be better? Because I don't have to deal with any of that, right? My landlord takes care of that usually.
Or if you live in an apartment, you phone the office, they come send a maintenance guy in 2 days to come fix your shower. You don't have to pay for it. Go to Home Depot. Yeah,
typically on your landlord, unless you got some special arrangement or whatnot, which means you're probably getting discounted rent if you do have a special arrangement.
Right.
But regardless, it's got to work into your budget. So knowing what all the expenses are, knowing what all the responsibilities are, and making sure that fits into your budget where you aren't spending more than the amount of income that you have coming in can be huge.
The landscaping thing is one thing that you just said that I really didn't even think of, but I've actually seen people buy nice new houses and have lost the yard within 2 months because they just didn't want to maintain it, or they couldn't afford to maintain it, or whatever the case.
You ever drive to like a new home development too, and like there's the nice houses, and then you see houses that look like they haven't done anything. It's like dirt, no fence. They didn't have any money to put into their yard. You buy a beautiful, nice, brand new house. It's like buying a brand new, Range Rover car or something nice, but then you put the spare tires on it or something like that, right? The dings on it.
I actually never thought of that but you made me think of that when I see a nice new house with just a dirt clod in front of it. Pretty much, that's pretty much what happens. So
that was a bad decision. I hate that too. And then the neighbors get mad, and then it brings everybody down, and now you're fighting. But but yeah, and then like I said, there's other things too, like furniture. If I come out of a 700 square foot apartment into a $2,500 house, do you think I need to fill that house with more furniture? Probably. Or I'm going to be living like I'm in the boiler room age of sitting on boxes, right?
Yeah. The blow up air couch is not going to fit in your living room on this one. So
you might as well be couch surfing.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that goes into it. So just know those things. Being ahead of that and knowing all these things, right? I am ready to buy. I think I have an area where I know I can buy. I know about the landscaping. I know about I'm going to have to fix that sink. How do you get there? Have you looked at your finances? That's what we kind of the how. How do you get there?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And we kind of just
so
touched on that too right now, right? Like with the budget and writing it all down. I would say, regardless, whatever you do, like I said, I think renting might be better for a lot of people right now, but you still have to know how you're going to rent and whatnot, because qualifying for a rental is a lot more difficult than it used to be. The credit checks, the income verifications, the assets they want you to have. Sometimes I've seen renting qualifications stricter than buying qualifications.
yeah, yeah.
Like they want your debt ratio at 30% for some people I know, investors I know that rent their homes. They'll make sure that their debt ratio is at 30%, where a mortgage you can go up to 50, for example, or 55, right? Sometimes. So if you want to find out like which way am I going to do it, the how, if you will, go apply for apply for both if you want, right? Do an application, spend $20 on a credit check for an apartment application, see if you get qualified, versus the mortgage, right? Yeah.
But
Have you made a decision, obviously, for either
yeah,
one too, right?
yeah, go get out there. I mean, go to the rent place. They want 2.5 times your paycheck. If you're renting an apartment, they want that. They want a certain amount of credit. They want 2 months rent. Do you have all that even? I mean, know where you're at, know your worth, know your value, know where your standing is. Apply for a loan. Know why your DTI is too high to buy a house. No, oh, I need $20,000 for a down payment. A lot of people are going to these things blind, but apply for it. That's what they're there for. Get your credit check. Have them build you a plan. I think that's the smartest thing you can do, either rent or buy, is to go out there, make a decision, actually jump into it, and then you can get some feedback, and then you can build your plan like we kind of talked about on later. But that's a good starting point, I think. Yeah,
decision is huge, like you just said. Well, I mean,
get a starting point.
And I, do what Rachel would do on Friends. Just do a pros and cons list, maybe. Like write a line, right down the middle, buy, rent, inside there, pros and cons, weigh it out, make a decision, set a plan, and then execute that plan. And don't go back unless there's readjustments that you want to do. Don't be indecisive in life right now. There's a lot of indecisiveness right now in this world, and it's understandable, but it will prevent people from moving forward. Just like my friends who have been renting an apartment for 20 plus years and haven't made a decision, and they haven't gone anywhere further. And again, if they're okay with that, but then they should stop looking for houses and wondering why they can't afford it. Because when they started looking in their area, houses were 700,000. Now they're like $1.5 million for a old crappy house, and they're wondering, why not me, or whatever the case is. So
yeah, no, I've done silly things like make pros and con lists on pieces of paper just to go on vacation on 2 different places. I've done these little silly things just to kind of, it's easier to see on paper, it's easier to view, it's easier to make decisions. I know it's a silly thing, but what you just talked about, the waiting and the waiting and it kind of reminds me of, have you ever seen a dog in the shallow end of a pool trying to pick a weight so you can get to the end of the pool for a toy or something like that?
right.
It's basically what's happening. They're sitting around, nothing's happening. They're just going back and forth on the stairs, and they're trying to get to the other side of the deep end. But in this case, in the world, the pool is getting deeper every day. So yeah, you need to jump in and go for it. So
Yeah. So find out what's better for you. Like I said, buying's not for everybody. Buying a home right now isn't for everybody. It's kind of trending against it anyways right now. Know what your plan is, because I have friends that have bought investment homes, 2, 3, 4 of them before they even bought their primary home. I know people that a house hack, where they live in the house, fix it, rent it, buy another house, live in it, and they've done that 3, 4, 5 deep. And I know people that have maybe more responsibility, need stability, and have to buy their house, their primary home, and live in it, and then they can look at other investment opportunities, or just live life, or whatever they choose after that. All right, so know what you want to do. Stop listening to gurus, Uncle Bill, or anybody else that's not living your life. If you're going to talk to anybody, talk to your partner, talk to a trusted advisor, or somebody like that you're on the same page with.